Who'd you look up to when you first started riding?
I actually looked up to a guy named Pete Augustin that not many people hear about these days, but he was able to do like 100 front wheel hops, and that was seriously like a big trick. So yeah, now I always respected Pete, man.
Cool.
He was a street rider.
Who'd you look up to when you started riding?
Scotty, actually. There's a 9-minute video I had on my MySpace of like to a Pendulum song. It's probably still on there. So I watched that, and actually Aaron Ross too. The chill bro, I got caught onto the colors as a young lad. Like most of us.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Who did you look up to when you started riding?
Chris Bennett.
Do you have one?
Greg Lanthorn.
Isn't it weird how like they become your friends or you work with
Yes.
them? Or
When
so
I was
weird.
10, GL was my favorite pro in the world, and now I've worked with him for the last 10 years, and we've always been friends.
Who did you look up to when you first started riding?
My dad, all the local guys, like around the push guys around Pittsburgh.
It was all the local home. Jeremy and Felice. Jeremy and Felice, yeah.
Thanks, dude.
You're welcome.
Chase Hawk, Aiken.
And that was right when it was
30 Dan Bogart. Yeah.
So when I really got into it, it was definitely like Brian Castillo first, and then
Chase Hawk. I was like, all right.
Thank you, guys.
I had 4.5. The guy was like, yeah.
No worries.
Who do you look up to when you started riding?
second bro.
John Heaton.
Nice.
And Corey Martinez. But John Heaton was my guy. That was my first 20-inch frame, was the Heaton, McNeil Heaton. Fire.
Who did you look up to when you first started riding?
I would say Brian Foster, Mike Aiken, that old Joe. Racer-wise, I looked up to a dude named Kyle Bennett a lot, racing-wise too. Guys like that. Just the dudes that kept it simple.
Yeah.
Didn't really need to do much more than, you know, the stock, generic, one-trick onlys. Seemed like they had a culture around it, a lifestyle too, so all those dudes.
Who'd you look up to when you first started riding?
Oh man, Chris Doyle. He was my icon. And also Dennis.
Who did you look up to when you first started riding?
Chase Hawk. And I literally dressed like him, bought his shoes, all that. Not no more though, but Chase Hawk when I first started riding. Chance, V-neck, all that.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Who'd you look up to when you first started riding?
Oh, when I first started riding, it was, let's see, it was a lot of racers because I grew up racing. So my first like over the top, just loved him with Daryl Young. Daryl Young, Oregon racer, look him up kids, oozes style. And then it progressed to freestyle and a whole lot of riders after that. But Daryl Young was the first.
Who'd you look up to when you first started riding?
When I first started riding, probably Alex Heim and Pat Casey and Matt Ray. Like those guys really inspired like how I started riding.
Who'd you look up to when you started riding bikes?
Well, it was Evel Knievel for wheelies, but then bikes, you had like Bob Harrow, Arl Osborne, you know, the guys were starting. Mike Buff was right there, but then there was a whole list of other riders at that time that were all the top pros, and we looked up to all those guys, but they all pretty much inspired us, you know, at that time, or at least me. So, and I was right on their heels, man, just right there nipping at them.
Thanks.
It's all good.
Who do you look up to when you started riding? First started?
Lots of people. Dennis McCoy, Dave Voelker, Rick Malterno. You know, I was a late 80s kid. All those names back then. Arl Osborne, who I've become friends with, which is pretty cool.
When I started riding, I was definitely looking up to probably Brian Foster. And I still look up to him. He rules. And probably Mikey Aiken, just because they both have the sickest style. Yeah.
Thanks, dude. Who'd you look up to when you first started riding?
When I look up to, the very first favorite rider would be this guy, John Dizzix, and he was like a metalhead dude, and that's probably why I gravitated towards him. He was like a kick turn ramp guy, and he always had like spike bracelets on and shit, because I was like a little metalhead when I was little, so he was like my first favorite. But my first favorite rider that I saw in person, I would have to say was Todd Lyons. Back when he was racing like 15, 16, 17 expert, and like at nationals, he'd be like winning mains, and he would like 360 a huge jump in the middle of the race, you know? And like all the parents were pissed, and all the people that were really serious were pissed about it. But like all the jumpers loved it, and it was just like wild style. Cause he would just like, he would be winning, and then he would do a trick, and he would either pull it and it would be like the best thing ever, or he'd blow up and it would be the best thing ever. So it was like pure entertainment.
Who'd you look up to when you started riding?
When I first started, Hollywood Mike Miranda. Yeah.
I can't lie.
Thank you.
Explains a lot. Yeah, boys.
Who did you look up to when you first started riding?
Alex Liv.
Who did you look up to when you first started riding?
When I first started riding, I have to say like Hoffman, Mira, Asado, Miron, like those old warriors, you know, that there seemed to be only like 5 or 6 in the pro class, but they were like padded up and it was on, you know, and that was pretty inspiring to watch as a kid coming through and trying to learn tricks too. So they were like superheroes, so those guys.
Who'd you look up to when you started riding?
Brantmore.
That's a loaded question.
No, Brant knew that. I was a little scooter kid.
Cut!
At the skate park.